We're at it again. Plot point 14. We are at the midpoint conflict itself. Everything has been running to this moment in your narrative. The Act 1 has set up the world enough for us to basically challenge and disrupt it to a point where when the midpoint hits, the world reverses and the truth of the lie is revealed. So today we are ultimately, we're flying through the 27 plot points, so we're doing pretty good with this. But PP14 is known as the midpoint conflict. This is literally, no pun intended, the middle of your narrative and also the middle of Act 2. Why is that important? Well, remember, every act has its overall arcs because it has a beginning, middle, and end, but every narrative also has a beginning, middle, and end. So this is doing double duty. The truth the protagonist believed, or I should say the lie the protagonist believed at the beginning in Act 1 is now about to be pushed around, and the truth of that lie will be revealed. It could shatter their worldviews. It could, but it doesn't always have to. So I want to, because remember, it could also be positive. Remember, consequences can be positive. So we're gonna talk about it. We're gonna go over what the truth of the lie is, etc., etc. So whether you're a pantser or discoverer, and you like the plot, whatever the case is, you need to understand what the midpoint conflict is. So whether you're writing to it without an idea of where you're going, and you get to it, understanding what the purpose of the midpoint is, will allow you to look back at what you have pantsed, whether you plotted it or you wrote it from the seat. You need to understand how all of that has created a lie the character believes, not only for themselves, but the world around them. It could be a whole bunch of other things. It could be the lie they believe spiritually, mentally, emotionally, physically, whatever the case is. Now you have to say, how do I shift that? How do I reveal a truth to the lie they believe and reverse their whole world? So it's important to know this stuff for it to be a midpoint conflict. Before we get into it, please subscribe and hit the bell icon so you don't miss out. What does the midpoint really do? Well, at its core, the midpoint conflict is about revelation and reversal. Your protagonist has been operating under a lie, a false belief about themselves, the world, the antagonist, or their goal, or all of it. Remember, it's your narrative. You can do whatever you want. And there's nothing wrong with that. They could believe all the lies. Anyway, the lie did do something very important. The lie got them through Act 1 and into the adventure of Act 2's opening, but it was always flawed in some way or another. So the midpoint does force the truth into the open, and the truth changes how they see everything, right? More importantly, the protagonist gets to this moment and the truth is revealed, yes, but the new world that was set up in the beginning of Act 2 is now challenged, and this creates the reveal of the truth, but it also creates such a push on the fundamental beliefs of your character that they are going to completely change, somewhat change, or not change at all. If they don't change at all, they double down. What does that mean? Well, going into the reversal, their emotional reaction to that is going to lead to the immediate reaction of the midpoint in PP15 next video. But it's going to set up the emotional, like, what does it mean to them? Is this something that they're going to double down on and stick with their lie that they believe? Are they going to somewhat change and be like, oh, or are they going to completely change? So it's important to understand that beat. A quick aside, it's not always a huge twist, by the way, though it can be. Sometimes it's a quick and quiet realization, a sacrifice maybe, or a battle that reveals deeper layers. But it always, in every situation, disrupts the course of their lie, brings it into a new lens of the truth. The protagonist can't pretend anymore because the truth is revealed. What I would do, my advice to you is to ask these questions. And there are plenty of questions, but these are 4 questions to get you thinking. How does this truth reshape how does this truth reshape the protagonist's beliefs? Was it earned? Because you seeded. Did you seed enough? Did you hint enough? Did you add enough context? Does the belief change completely, partially, somewhat, or do they not at all and they double down? That's important. You need to know that answer. Doesn't have to be explored in PP14, but it will be touched on in the next plot point, and then it'll influence how they move on to finding a solution for plot point 16, 17, and 18, and then how they go into Act 3. So, I'm just saying, understanding how this truth influences them emotionally will influence those beats as well. So that's important to know. I do want to add, only add a little something, something here, something, 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 something. So, by the way, it can be a twist, but it doesn't have to be a huge twist. The twist or the whatever the case is, again, if we talk about like a romance or something like that, if a character says, "Will you marry me?" in the midpoint, and the other character says yes, that's still the truth of the reveal. Like, oh, we're gonna get married. Oh, you said yeah. One character could have had the lie like, I don't think we're ever gonna get married, but I love this relationship. I would like to get married, but I don't think it's happening. And then the other one is saying, I don't know if I am the right person for her. I don't want to lock her down and be entrap her because she's doing so much with her business. And they might have these two lies that they believe, and they're just lies. But finally, they break down and like, I'm gonna do it. Will you marry me? Yes, I will. There's no question about it. Oh wow, what kept us from this for so long? It was our inner doubt, our inner lie, and now the reversal is they are now engaged. Their life has changed, and moving forward, how are they gonna solve the problem that was created by the midpoint conflict? And you're like, Thomas, there is no problem. The problem is they're engaged and they want to get married. So they have to solve that. How will they get married by the end of the movie? Okay. But it could also be the other way. Will you marry me? No. Why not? I don't know how to tell this to you, but I've been in love with your brother for the last 6 months, and I was gonna break up with you, but I didn't know how to. It could be bad like that. All right, the truth of the lie that's revealed. Act one must, without a shadow of doubt, set up the context of the lie, giving the reader an idea of what the character believes or doesn't believe. Remember, the lie could be that they believe the earth is flat, or it could be that's the lie they believe. However, it could be the other way around. It could be like the earth really is flat, and they are like, the earth's not flat. And then the midpoint conflict is like, no, the earth is flat. For the record, I believe the earth is round and oblique. All right. With that said, remember, what someone doesn't believe can also be a lie, as I explained with the flat earth. So, lies can be something as little as it could be like a small lie could just be like, I have doubt in myself. All right. So like, and that small lie would still drive the narrative. But it's just not something big. It's not like the world is going to explode. Instead, it's more about the character and how maybe they don't believe they have value, that they are worth love. And that's it's a very emotional lie they believe. But it's not like, you know, zombies zombies won't get me. That is a lie. I am not going to get hit by a zombie. All right. Whatever it is, though, you should be setting it up through a mixture of efforts. One is dialogue, for sure. Another is physical behavior, context, and how others see them. If I were you, I wouldn't go all in on one of those things. I would break it up and be like, let's show them believing the lie. Let's have them talk about the lie. Let's have other people push back on the lie and challenge them to see if they do change before the midpoint. But usually they won't. But they can. In fact, they could, like, for example, let's say somebody's like, we're in the Matrix. And the character's like, you know what? You've convinced me. We are in the Matrix. And then the midpoint conflict is, no, you're not in the Matrix. It's all been a pack. It's all been a pack of lies. All right. Anyway. For example, though, Edward went to speak, his words lost on his tongue, and his hand stayed by his side, even though in his mind he reached out to stop her from leaving. No, don't go, he said. She turned around before getting on the bus. What, Edward? She longed in his stare, waiting for him to find the will within, the strength to find his confidence. I I wanted to wish you a safe trip. I'll see you at Christmas. Her whole world faded in her eyes, her head dropping. She grabbed the bus for balance. Bye, Edward. The bus drove away, and he waved to her one last time in the tint of the windows. Bye, Edward. Her voice clear in the replay of the moment. She is better off in LA. Better off from him. She will find better. Okay, so that's an example of somebody not necessarily having confidence. They believe that lie. They believe they are not worth love. So that is how you would set up the physical. That is the showing, that is the dialogue, that is the pushback. We know that she wants him to say, please stay. All right. So that was that example. The example was to show you how it looks like without it being directly said, like, I'm not worth love. That is what showing would look like. And these elements set up the driving force of the lie in Act 1. And maybe Act 2 would be that Edward goes to LA. And the midpoint conflict is that he confesses his love, but she's in a relationship now. Okay? Or maybe he confesses his love, and she's like, I wanted to hear you say that more than anything in the world, but I don't know if I could trust it because you don't have the confidence, but you deserve the confidence and you deserve the love, and I just don't want you to be with me, and we get into the groove of it, and then you feel you're not worthy of it, and you got to do a little work on yourself. So now the second half of Act 2 is about finding the worth within the self. Act 3 is actually making those changes and ending up back in a relationship together. So that's why it's important to understand what the lie is in Act 1 and set it up that way so you can then challenge it. So anyway, I wanted to show you what it looked like, basically. So, in reality, this kind of truth would be seeded and broken up into a narrative. So you could take that scene that I read, the Edward scene, and you could basically take those beats and spread them out. That could technically also be the end of like, that technically could be the inciting incident, leaving, right? So you set up the world before that, character leaves, Edward's like, what do I do? What do I do? And then finally, the twist is that he's like, you know what? I'm going to go to LA, and he he sells his stuff, and then in the next plot point, and then he's in LA in the beginning of Act 2. Anyway, with that said, if you don't know, you can go to makearightleft.com and you can check me out. I have books. I do education stuff. You could hire me. I do a lot of fun stuff. And I usually talk about my books right here. By the way, the Epic Fantasy, that I will say, is on Patreon, specifically the Scribed tier. But more importantly, it is educational. Look into it. The prologue is available for free. All right. The right mindset perspective. Remember, the midpoint doesn't have to be a massive, huge, big, huge, large, massive explosion, though it can be. But it can also be as small as Barbossa cuts Elizabeth's hand to drop the blood into the Aztec gold. Waste not, want not. And the curse happens not to break because, well, Elizabeth isn't who she said she was. The purpose of the midpoint conflict is always going to be about switching the understanding of what has come before. This change is going to react, all right, or I should say, this change is reactive to both the lie that was set up in Act 1 and challenging the characters of how they experience the new world. Good to know. Okay, but it will also create a problem. So whatever the reversal is, whatever the truth of the lie that's revealed in the midpoint conflict of PP14, that would create the problem. All right. So example for the Edward thing. Basically, look, I wanted you to say those words for the longest time, but I don't trust your confidence. You have to. I need to believe that you have the confidence to believe in yourself. Truth is, she wants to be with you, and he made an effort. But Now he has to put in the work. He has to fix that problem. He has to prove that he believes in his worth. Okay. For Pirates of the Caribbean, Elizabeth says that she is Turner. She's Elizabeth Turner, the daughter of Bootstrap Bill. She's not. And Barbossa's like, wait a minute, the curse isn't cured. So the problem that's created is we have to find who's out there, and Elizabeth is in danger. My advice to plotters or pantsers is this: if you're outlining, when you get to PP14, go back and think about how the previous 13 plot points set up the lie the character believes. Make sure the midpoint conflict then exposes the truth of that lie. Once it's exposed, how does it change the narrative moving forward? Now, if you're a pantser, nice pants, do the same thing after writing out all your chapters leading to the midpoint conflict. So after you write it out and figure it out and discover it, take some notes, go back. Go back in time. Finally, if you don't know what the lie is that the protagonist believes, and it happens, that's okay. Because maybe you're just writing and you're just like, I just want to see where it goes. I don't know what's going on. You can always figure that out later as you finish your narrative's outline or your first drafts as a pantser. However, once you do all that, the analysis comes in. And you could look at the midpoint of your narrative and make sure it does indeed have a reveal of the truth of the lie. If it doesn't, if it's not informing the protagonist and the reader that things are not what they were before this moment, it's time to figure that out. Because a true midpoint conflict creates a problem that develops the reversal because the truth of the lie was revealed. P.S. It doesn't have to be a massive twist, by the way, like a dun dun dun. I am my twin brother, for I had killed my brother 7 years ago. It just needs to reframe what it is the character believes, though it can be a twist. At the end of the day, you don't need to have this down perfect at all, especially in your zero, first, or even a second draft. You can always go back and do the work. I recommend always doing the work as you develop your narrative. Write out your drafts and give yourself enough data to play with. But you do need to go back and do the work to make sense of what it is, isn't, and should be there. When you notice these things, make sure you, as a writer, make choices and clean up, adjust, and change what must be changed. The next video in this series, if you didn't know, is going to be plot point 15, the immediate reaction or consequence of the midpoint conflict, the reversal. No time to think. No time to think. It's the immediate reaction. But on an aside, if you have a video idea you want me to do, or you want me to go deeper into something, you just let me know in the comments and I'll make it. I'll randomly post it. That's what we do here. Oh, by the way, like what you saw today? But you haven't subscribed? What's the deal? Hit the subscribe button and the bell icon so you don't miss out. And more importantly, if you found this information quite helpful, thumbs up. Trying to get that face down. What do you think? What do you think? No, I should get rid of the face? All right. By the way, every Saturday, Sunday, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we do a live, and I have a lot of fun. You can ask questions. It's great. It's good times. Anyway, I'm Thomas J. Bellezza. As always, keep developing the right boys and boys.